Hey, what up, everybody? Stevie Breach coming to you. By now, I'm sure you've seen the tweets by Stone Cold Steve Austin and the interview by Brock Lesnar. If not, you read about it in the dirt sheets. And basically, these guys are, semi sort of talking trash about each other. But the way Lesnar put it, I think he put it right. He just answered a question. If he could have a match in WWE, who would he like to fight today? And he said Stone Cold Steve Austin. He said that it was Austin because that was the guy he was supposed to fight, and he never got a chance to. And because of the fact that they were supposed to have a match together, he packed his bags and went home. And then Lesnar took a few little cheap shots in there, and I think that what Austin said, all in all, I really don't see anything into this. I know that Austin, not only does he like to go to a lot of UFC fights, but he's always said that he's semi sort of close with Brock. I think these guys are more than likely in some sort of a handshake deal to try and sell some video games here for WB12. That's what the interview was about, and basically, I don't think anything's gonna come of this. I don't think Dana White's ever gonna let Brock Lesnar come to WWE and have another match, whether it's the Undertaker or Stone Cold Steve Austin. I'm I don't even know. I was gonna say 50-50, but I might even be like 90%, 10% that Stone Cold Steve Austin's ever gonna come back and have a match anyways. So a little bit of me thinks it's not even worth making a video about. But since I'm here and I already started, you know the only way I can sort of spin this is if this is real legitimate heat against Brock Lesnar and Stone Cold Steve Austin that is going on now. Who's to blame for this? Is Brock Lesnar, to blame for, shoveling dirt, or no, maybe not even shoveling dirt for unburying like a situation that's been dead for a long time? Is it still Stone Cold's fault that he packed up and he went home? Is it WWE's fault for not knowing how to book Stone Cold Steve Austin and sort of giving up on him in the early year of 2002, running out of ideas and not knowing how to push their biggest superstar that they had? Um, all in all, Brock, Stone Cold Steve Austin's taken a lot of heat for this over the years. I mean, WWE didn't add it. They didn't try to help him out at all. With the big Raw magazine that came out with the whole cover story based on Austin going home and them taking cheap shots at him on TV and pay-per-views and DVDs. I can't exactly remember how long it was that he was out for. I think it was at least until 2004, but I'm off the top of my head. I didn't look into that before he came back and he had the big fight with Eric Bischoff, and he came back into the company and they sort of repatched things up. I think it was a good long break. I know the 10th Raw anniversary even popped up, and he was voted the best superstar of all time, and he didn't show up to accept the award, whether if he wasn't invited or he just didn't show up. I don't know. I've never looked into that before, but um, all in all, Stone Cold Steve Austin, everybody knows. He started out the year. He was the one of the final four guys in the Royal Rumble. He used that to make it into a title shot at the next pay-per-view where he lost. Fought Scott Hall in the NWO at WrestleMania. That snowballed into a feud against the whole NWO, which broke up mid-feud mostly because of Scott Hall being fired, Kevin Nash being injured, and that led to the Judgment Day where Ric Flair basically filled in a match where he was in a feud with the Big Show, who had turned against them to join the NWO. At Judgment Day, that was Stone Cold's match. It was Big Show and Ric Flair against Stone Cold Steve Austin in a match that he didn't care about. Also on this card is Brock Lesnar finishing up his feud with the Hardys. The Hardys were a team that were picked mostly for the fact that they were fan favorites, and they were small guys that would make Brock Lesnar look huge at the time, who had just debuted the Raw after WrestleMania in a real big way by coming and squashing everybody. And they went on like a few month long feud. It's been noted that Jeff said it and Matt said it. The one reason why they were picked more than anything is because they sold better than anybody on the roster, and they knew they could help get Brock over. And that was basically all there was. So from Judgment Day to the King of the Ring, it's been Stone Cold got sick of what he was doing. He was in a feud with Ric Flair, who they were trying to turn into the new Vince McMahon, basically because Stone Cold and Vince had done everything in the world and there was nothing left for them to do. So the new owner, commissioner, GM, whatever his title was, Ric Flair was starting up with Stone Cold Steve Austin, and that was leading into a feud of Eddie Guerrero versus Stone Cold vs. Steve Austin, which was supposed to happen on King of the Ring. But they got a mad idea on Monday Night Raw is, you know what? We're going to put Brock Lesnar in there, who had already qualified for the King of the Ring. He was going to be in the tournament that they already had won. This is back in the day before WB had Hollywood writers, and it wasn't written on a week-to-week basis. Basically, you knew you were going for the long time, the long term. It was basically already determined that Brock was going to win the King of the Ring, and he was going to go on to SummerSlam and fight The Rock at SummerSlam 2002. Basically, 2002, this is probably the best DVD that's out there. Honestly, people, if you don't own this DVD, make this DVD the next one you buy. Can't put this one over enough. I wasn't going to show this one unless I was going to plug it like that. But basically, Stone Cold was written booked like crap. I mean, Stone Cold had been the biggest star they had since arguably 97, maybe you can say 98, and he'd been on a tear. He's done everything. That was the problem. What were they going to do with this guy? They already had made him the super face of the company, and then they turned him heel, which was probably a big, it didn't really work out, and then they turned him face again. He'd already fought every guy up and down the thing. And now they're feeding him to this guy on Monday Night Raw, who is Brock Lesnar. He became a big, huge star for WWE. He made lots of money. Had two big WrestleMania matches. That's all he ever had. He had against Kurt Angle when he won the title, and he had against Goldberg when he lost. And the Goldberg match sucks, but it still was the match that people wanted to see. It was basically those guys showed up, and they figured out it was their last day on the job, and they didn't really want to give anybody anything to write home about. But all in all, when it comes down to it, Austin should have done business with Brock. I'm a firm believer in, there's a boss and you're the worker, and it doesn't matter what they tell you to do when you get in there. Wins and losses don't matter. It doesn't matter who you are. But Austin didn't want to play ball with Brock because one thing he has to protect his, he has to protect his image. Is losing one match on Monday Night Raw going to make you, nothing? I mean, like, The Rock, before WrestleMania, in the go-home match, lost to the Hurricane. The Hurricane never mattered to... Well, he mattered a little bit. I really like the Hurricane. But all in all, when it comes down to the history of wrestling, the Hurricane ain't going to no Hall of Fame. He ain't he's not somebody that you tell your friends about. Make sure you go check out some Hurricane matches. If somebody's getting into wrestling, that's not the guy you do it for. So losing one match on Monday Night Raw isn't gonna really hurt you, but for all Austin knew, Brock Lesnar could have turned out to be the Wall from WCW. If you're not familiar with who the Wall is a guy that WCW had high hopes on and was pushing like crazy. And then out of the middle of nowhere, they stuck him in the Soldier Boy gimmick, and he became AWOL, hooking up with General Erection and all those other the Misfits with Action. That's what they called. And it ruined this guy. I mean, one false move with Brock Lesnar, and he could have been nobody. He ended up becoming a big, huge star and everything. But I'm just saying, he could have ended up being the low end of the stick. And you don't ever know what's going to happen these days. So why would Austin want to lose to some guy that's been in the company for less than 3-4 months at that time? It makes no sense at all. If they wanted to have the match, they could have had some sort of, as Bret Hart likes to put it, have some sort of a schmoz. Like I said, Stone Cold was in the middle of a feud with Eddie Guerrero, who had just came back at that time. He hadn't really adopted the cheat to win thing, but I mean, he could have easily came out there and caused a disqualification, and there wouldn't have been any winner. But the story's always been that they were actually telling Lesnar that he was going to win, he was going to beat Austin. Or why else would Austin pack his bags and go home? All in all, I think the real loser out of this probably is Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero was getting his first real big push, and a lot of people were looking forward to that. Eddie Guerrero ended up having to fight Ric Flair at the King of the Ring instead of Stone Cold Steve Austin. And, Ric Flair, the big name he was in 2002, wasn't the Ric Flair that everybody thought he was. He was still coming into his own. He still had his, his head sort of in the toilet from the WCW days. He didn't have faith in himself at that time. He didn't really come into his own. He had a good match before that with The Undertaker at WrestleMania, but he hadn't really got, his feet running on the treadmill yet. It was still a tough hill to climb. But all in all, if this was true, more than likely I put more blame on Stone Cold. Stone Cold could have lost one match. You got to protect yourself a little bit, but all in all, it's only one match. And even if this guy doesn't turn out, you can look at a guy like The Rock. Like I pointed out, The Rock had lost hundreds of matches. It didn't matter who it was. If they told him to put him over, he put him over. That's just the way you do business.